And we'll end this chapter looking at cognitive behavioral theory, and specifically one formula used in CBT that's very useful in helping people to understand how their faulty thinking leads to their emotional and behavioral outcomes. The A plus B equals C model. A plus B equals C model was actually developed by a gentleman by the name of Albert Ellis, and he actually had his own distinct form of CBT called rational emotive behavior therapy. For the purpose of this class, we're lumping them all together into one kind of umbrella term, CBT. Ellis said that what causes human suffering is not events that happen to you, but how you think about those events. Your faulty, what Ellis would call irrational thinking, and negative thinking, negative interpretation of the events that have happened to you, leads to negative emotions, negative behaviors, unhealthy things. So Ellis develops this formula, A plus B equals C. And he says that A is the activating event. What is the thing that happened? What is the thing that was said? What is the thing that occurred? What is the thing that was done? Now, a lot of people believe that A causes, in this formula, C, the consequent emotion or behavior. So, for example, it's very common for people to say, you hurt my feelings when you said that. And Ellis would say, no. A, activating event, that person saying a mean thing, and C, your emotion. It's not a direct causal relationship in there because there's this other variable, what he calls the B, your belief about the event, your thoughts about the event that cause you to interpret the event that way. So Ellis would say, no, hold on. They said that mean thing to you. What was the thought that went through your head? Were you thinking they should be nice? They aren't supposed to say that. They're not allowed to say that. It's really hurtful that they say that because, they should think I'm a wonderful person, right? And Ellis would say no. Because if two different people, totally different people, said that same thing to you, would you respond the same way? Well, chances are if it was someone that you cared about and you liked and respected, you would feel one way. But if it was someone that you didn't give a crap about and they said it to you, chances are you wouldn't get upset. Because who cares about their opinion? Your belief between those two events is what impacts how you feel. I used to work as a group counselor for men who were arrested for domestic violence charges, right? And so I would use this A plus B equals C model in a way to try to reinforce the model, but also challenge the men. Let's take a look at that. So a lot of these men would come in because they had incurred some sort of charge, legal charge, for being physically or verbally aggressive towards their significant others. And to their credit, a lot of the men would come in and they would be pretty honest about what they had done to bring them into mandated batterers intervention counseling. So there was one common phrase that I would hear among these men that was just kind of like over time became like something that made me twitch, right? They would use this phrase, pushed my buttons, or some variation thereof. And they would say something along the lines of, well, she knew what she was doing because she pushed my buttons. And when you do that, you know I'm going to go off and blah, blah, blah. She wanted it. She wanted me to get violent. She set me up, right? So I would say, okay, all right, let's talk about this idea of pushed my buttons. Your wife, let's just say in this instance, it was an incident with a spouse. Your wife pushed your buttons. So what was a button that she pushes that would make you go off? And just using this as an example, but this was actually a real example that was given to me. One gentleman said, when she says F you, I said, okay. So when your wife says F you, what happens? She pushes that button, F you, and what does she get? What comes out of the vending machine when she hits F you? And he would be honest and he would say, I get angry, I start making threats, I get violent, right? The things that brought him into this batterers intervention group. I would say, okay, all right. So she pushes buttons, you're like a vending machine, you hit F, you, this is what comes out, right? He would say, yeah, she knew what she was doing. So, okay, let's change the script a little bit here. And let's say that someone else is still coming up to you, the vending machine, and they're hitting FU, but instead of it being your wife hitting the FU button, right, it's a police officer. So when the police officer says FU, are you getting as angry, making threats, and being violent like you were with your wife? And of course, you would get one or two hard asses in the group, right? That would say, I don't care, I'll punch a cop. No one's going to talk that way to me. Most people, that's not the case, right? Most people, the first thing going through their head is, don't tase me, bro, right? Most people, when encountering that FU from a police officer, are going to be angry, but chances are they're going to be a lot more calm and in control of their behavior. Now, what's the difference between these two? And I would say to the client, well, if you're a vending machine and somebody pushes the button, you should get the same thing out each time. If I go to a vending machine and I hit the Pepsi button and a Pepsi comes out, and then I go back again and I hit the Pepsi button and a Coke comes out, something's not right there. I'm pushing the same button. What's the difference between these two scenarios? They both have the same A, activating event, but our C's, our consequent emotions and behaviors, are totally different. And I would argue, Albert Ellis would argue, that it's the B that's different. Because what are the thoughts that are going through that man's head when he's having that interaction with his wife? You can't say that to me. I'm a man. I'm in control. I'm more powerful than you. I'm stronger than you. I've got you, right? You can't do this to me. What are the thought processes that are going through that person's mind when they encounter that situation with a police officer? Chances are they're pretty different. There's a power differential with the police officer that's not there with your spouse. So when the police officer says F you, you might still be angry, but your beliefs, your thoughts about the situations and circumstances are probably going to lead to a much different consequent emotion and behavior. Now in therapy, what we want to try to do is do the D and E associated with the A plus B equals C model. So once we've reinforced to the client that it's your beliefs about a situation that lead to your emotions and your behaviors, in counseling, what we help clients to do is the D, dispute those irrational thoughts. So when you're having that thought in your head, you're confronting it and you're saying, no, is this not true? Is this right? Is this accurate? Is this correct? And if we can get people to replace those irrational thoughts and faulty thinking patterns, as Ellis calls them, then we have the E. We replace them with more effective thoughts, more rational thoughts, thoughts that don't lead us to these really extreme emotional and behavioral outcomes. Let's take a look at the application of the A plus B equals C model in regards to another phenomenon that involves anger.